right block, 40.
Discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. My name is George, and in this video I want to rank a bunch of different philosophies in a tier list. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the tier list, starting at S as the supreme tier, then A, B, C, D, E, and at the bottom F being the worst rank. So what we're going to do is go through a bunch of different philosophical theories, beliefs, arguments in a bunch of different areas. So philosophy of religion, ethics, meta-ethics, philosophy of mind.
Starts 50, one left. Good luck.
And we're going to place each of these philosophies on this tier list. What's going to determine the rank is down to how solid the philosophy is. So how convincing is the argument, how much sense does it make, how well does it hold up to criticism. Now, of course, every philosophy has its challenges, but what will rank a philosophy higher is how well it can be defended against the critiques and how easily the theory can be adopted. Now, it's not about should you or do you adopt any of these, but just how good of an argument are they. So let's get the screen sorted. We have 35 different philosophical theories to go through. If we can get these on the screen, great. Yep. So I'll give a very brief description of the theories and then we'll place them. This is just my opinion, so if you disagree with any of the placements, please let me know in the comments below. And before we begin, each of these theories we have a specific philosophy via video on. They've been discussed and debated. I have discussed and debated them with John. I'll tag a link to each of these as we go through them, and there'll be links below as well. So if you're unfamiliar with any of these theories, please go ahead and watch these debates. We've spent so much time discussing these philosophies, which puts me in a good position to rank them. So let's get started. Okay, number one, let's start with the teleological argument.
5.
So an argument for the existence of God. It basically says, because the universe is goal-directed and in a state of motion, it needs a designer, and that the universe and the laws of nature are so intricate, it's not down to chance, but...
I'm gonna be commenting just so we can avoid the, yeah, and so, but that's... you know, that's gonna happen, and then I need to fix steer, accelerate, clutch, handbrake, change view, headlights, reset, puncture, wipers, sequential. Okay. Look back. View out. Replay expected. Okay.
4, 3, 2, 1, go. 50, 1 left short.
But must have been designed, and this designer would effectively be God. Now,
And 3 right, half long, 140.
category, a middle tier theory. It is quite convincing because yes, the universe is intricate. Intricate things do need a designer. Paley's watch analogy is a good example of this. But I can't put it in the higher tiers because
Slight left, 60, 4 right short, keep it 270. Slowing.
Designer. Also, given an infinite amount of time, an exact world like ours could come about by chance. I think that there is an argument there. And also, the universe is
Slight right, 40, turn, 1 left, 50.
Only goes so far. So, because of that,
Right of a small crest,
number
90.
2, let's go utilitarian.
Slight left,
So,
2.
an ethical theory that says the right action is that which generates the greatest good for the greatest number. Now, I'm putting that on a B tier. I actually think most of our ethical choices are centered around doing the greatest good for the greatest number. I think that's
Oops.
Hello and welcome to Philosophy Vibe, the channel where we discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. Today we're going to be focusing on some ethics and looking into moral
Left entry
realism.
chicane.
Excellent. Now, one of the major
260.
debates in ethics and moral philosophy is the realism versus anti-realism debate. Moral realism is the position that morality is objective. That is to say, there exist objective moral
left,
truths in the world
slowing,
that we can
120.
discover. These truths are
3
independent
right,
of anyone's
half long,
beliefs. They are
140.
facts in and of themselves. Whereas moral anti-realism holds
4
that
left
there
of
are
a
no
crest,
objective
150.
moral values or moral truths. These do not exist, and all morality is just subjective personal belief or an expression of one's emotion. In this video, we're going to be focusing on moral realism, looking at how strong it is as a theory, as well as some of the challenges it faces.
For the purposes of developing and articulating a new and intellectually rigorous, intellectually
50.
sophisticated Christianity.
6 left short, 40. 2 right, 150.
Now, prior to Aristotle, or prior to Aquinas, the reason why this is so revolutionary, or why this is such an innovation, is that Christianity, since the time of Augustine, had been saturated in the Platonic tradition. Clearly, Plato is the most important and influential philosopher for St. Augustine. And from the time of Augustine and the fall of the Roman Empire through, I don't know, the year 1100 or 1200 anyway, the primary influence, the main connection between Christianity and Greece is to be found in the very limited number of Platonic works that are available. This is the sort of orthodoxy that is somewhat ossified in Catholic thinking prior to the time of Aquinas. What Aquinas is going to do is shift away from that Augustinian and Platonic tradition into a tradition that's Aristotelian. Aristotelian in the sense, first of all, that it's concerned more than the Augustinian tradition with concrete things. Second of all, Aquinas is going to be concerned with syllogistic logic. Logic and the syllogism are key ideas in scholastic thinking. The syllogism is the medium through which the scholastic thinker makes his arguments and articulates his views. So it has a characteristic form which is, of course, dear to the heart of Aristotle, one of the great logicians that ever lived, and certainly the one who worked out the theory of the syllogism and the idea of syllogistic reasoning. And in addition to that, Aquinas borrows a tendency from Aristotle towards system building, towards a sort of encyclopedism. Those of you who are familiar with Aquinas' great works, the Summa Contra Gentiles and the Summa Theologicae, can find that it is one of the most extraordinary and vast intellectual edifices you can imagine. It goes on seemingly for miles, volume after volume, question after question, covering every conceivable problem in morals and politics and theology and physics and ethics. It is a generally encyclopedic work. And I think that while this encyclopedic tendency is congenial to the mind of Aquinas, much of that tendency is reinforced by the fact that Aristotle had already attempted a kind of encyclopedic intellectual project before. So it's bringing this encyclopedic tendency to Christianity that makes the Thomas synthesis so powerful and so important. That's certainly one of the most important things that this does. But Aquinas' borrowings from the classical tradition are not to be understood as merely baptizing Aristotle. He is a very profoundly learned figure. Aquinas knows the entire classical tradition, or
secondly, for it to be in a state of potentiality. The earliest formulation of the argument for motion for God's existence can be found in the writings of the ancient philosopher Aristotle. Today, we'll take an introductory approach to a similar formulation given by Thomas Aquinas in the Summa Theologica, which was written in the 1200s and was heavily based on the Aristotelian concept of motion. We'll also see how the Thomistic philosopher Edward Fraser demonstrates the attributes of an unmoved mover based on this argument. Aquinas very famously begins the argument with the simple premise: it is certain and evident to our senses that in the world some things are in motion. This motion being spoken of doesn't necessarily mean motion in terms of acceleration or velocity of a certain body or mass. It has more to do with the idea of change. Another ancient philosopher was that of Parmenides. In around the 6th to 5th century BC, he proposed the concept that things do not change. For example, as the modern philosopher Edward Fraser explained Parmenides' argument, consider once again your coffee, which starts out hot, and after sitting on the desk for a while grows cold. You might say that the coldness of the coffee, which does not exist while the coffee is hot, comes into existence. For Parmenides, this was a problem, as this change came from non-existence, or nothingness. But something cannot logically come from nothing. Therefore, for Parmenides, change is impossible. Aristotle responded to Parmenides by insisting that change is possible by the potential and actuality of a thing. To give an example of this change, or motion that Aristotle spoke of, think of a coffee cup sitting on a table. Now, this coffee cup has the potential to grow cold, but this potential is only actualized or happens in reality by the cold air around the cup of coffee. Or think of a canvas. This canvas has the potential to be painted, but it is only actualized by a painter who paints it. That is where Thomas Aquinas argues the second premise. Things only move when potential motion is reduced to actual motion. In basic terms, all Aquinas is saying here is that change occurs only when something which has the potential to change actually changes in reality to that thing. As we said before, the hot cup of coffee has the potential to grow cold, and that potential becomes actual as the cold air cools it down. For Aquinas, in this premise, this is the concept of change, or as he puts it, motion. Aquinas' third premise goes as such. But nothing can be reduced from potentiality to actuality, except by something in a state of actuality. Thus, that which is actually hot, as fire makes wood, which is potentially hot, to be actually hot, and thereby moves and changes it. Of course, in Aquinas' premise, only something actually hot can make something else which has potential to be hot become actually hot. Or to put it more simply, if the hot air around a coffee cup is potentially cold, meaning it's not actually cold at that moment, it cannot make a coffee cup which is hot, which has potential to be cold, actually become cold, because the hot air around the cup is not actually cold either. Thomas Aquinas' fourth premise states, nothing can be in both act and potency in the same respect at the same time. The key word used here by Aquinas is in the same respect and at the same time. To put it simply, the hot cup of coffee cannot be in a state of actuality and potentiality with respect to it being hot. If the cup of coffee is actually hot, it logically follows that at that same moment it cannot be potentially hot because it already is actually hot. Secondly, for it to be in a state of potentiality and actuality at the same time and in the same manner with regard to its hotness, it would in turn violate the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction states that contradictory propositions cannot be both true at the same time and in the same sense. So yet again, the cup of coffee cannot be potentially hot and actually hot at the same time and in the same manner. The fifth premise Aquinas states acts as somewhat of a first conclusion based on the previous premises. He states, it is therefore impossible that in the same respect and in the same way a thing should be both mover and moved, i.e. that it should move itself. He also states elsewhere, now whatever is in motion is put in motion by another. What Aquinas is saying is that a thing which has potentiality cannot actualize itself, or in other words, change itself. The hot cup of coffee, which has the potential to be cold, cannot actualize that potential by itself. It takes the cold air around the hot cup of coffee to actualize that potential to be cold. The sixth premise states, therefore, whatever is in motion must be in motion by another. If that by which it is put in motion be itself put in motion, then this also must needs be put in motion by another, and that by another again. The cup of hot coffee has potential to be cold. This potential is actualized or made real by the cold air around the cup. But so too does the cold air around the coffee cup have to have potential to be cold. This potential is made actual by, say, an AC or a fan in a room. But so too does this AC and fan have potential to create cold air, and it is made actual either by electricity or by the cold air outside the house, and so on. With this logic in mind, Aquinas states in the seventh premise, but this cannot go on to infinity, because then there would be no first mover, and, consequently, no other mover, seeing that subsequent movers move only inasmuch as they are put in motion by the first mover, as the staff moves only because it is put in motion by the hand.
3 right,
Now quickly going back to the coffee cup, the cold air, and the
3
AC
left
air
short, to 5
this
right,
could go back
through
technically
junction
to
40,
infinity, as this is a
6
linear
left,
causal
slowing,
chain,
50,
meaning this causal chain of potentials
late
made action
overhand left,
takes place
30,
over a linear period of time.
square right,
The coffee
duct
cup
cut,
is made cold by the cold air. The air around the coffee cup is made cold by the AC. The AC creates cold air by the cold air
6
outside the
left,
house,
extra
and so
long.
on. To give another reason why linear causal series are not the causal series being spoken of, think of an infinite set of domino pieces.
50,
The first domino falls
3
forward
left,
and
opens,
creates an
70,
infinite causal chain which takes place over a period of time. But even if you get rid of the first domino in the
tightens
series,
5 of a
the
crest,
dominoes in the
90,
chain will continue to fall forward. They are not dependent on the first domino. But Aquinas is not talking about this type of causal chain being impossible, or not being able to be
3
infinite.
left, keep
He's
it into
talking
crest,
about a
brake, 80,
hierarchical causal chain. A hierarchical causal chain has to do with
square
motion
left,
or
keep it,
change in a specific
right,
moment.
duct cut,
This causal
side
chain
left,
does not take
slight
place over
right,
time. Think of a cup of coffee. What keeps this very cup of coffee in existence at any moment?
into 6
The
left,
philosopher
very
Edward
long,
Fager
slowing,
states, the potential of the coffee to
right,
exist here
40,
and now is actualized in part by the existence
6
of the
left,
water,
70,
which in turn exists only because a certain potential of the
3
atoms
right,
is being
tightens, square,
actualized,
half long,
where these atoms themselves exist
80.
only because a certain potential of the subatomic particles
hairpin
is
left,
being actualized.
opens, 80,
Everything in this causal chain is dependent on each other to
slight
exist
right,
at
into
any
6
given
left
moment.
of a crest,
Whereas,
50,
with
crest,
the linear
brake,
causal chain,
40,
if we got rid of the first
3
mover,
right short,
the chain would still
120,
continue, even if the first mover of the chain ceased to exist. Now,
6
one might
right,
begin to
40,
question or object to the hierarchical
slight
causal
left,
chain and
120,
say, why can't this chain go on to infinity, like the linear chain? The reasoning for this can be summarized in 2 analogies. Say there was an infinitely long set of box or train cars on a train track. Even if you had an infinitely long set without any beginning or end, this wouldn't cause the train cars to move forward. You would still need an engine, which is not dependent on anything else, to move the train cars. Or think of Edward Fager's analogy. Again, even an infinitely long paintbrush handle could not move itself, since the wood out of which it is made has no built-in power of movement. The length of the handle is irrelevant. Therefore,
caution, 4
if
left
there is
short,
a
small
hierarchical
cut,
causal chain that does not extend back to infinity, there has to be a first mover to this causal chain that sets all other things in motion. Aquinas states in the 8th premise, therefore, it is necessary to arrive at a first mover, put in motion by no other, and this everyone
small
understands to
jump,
be
100,
God.
4 left,
This
slowing,
first mover would also have
6
to be
right,
purely
long.
actual, meaning it contains no potentials, because if it did, then this causal chain would continue infinitely again, because something would have to actualize these potentials, and so on. But as we established, it is illogical for a hierarchical chain to have an infinite regression. Therefore, the first mover can also be called a purely actual actualizer, as the philosopher Edward Fager names it. Now technically, this is where Thomas Aquinas' argument for motion ends, as Aquinas concludes that this first mover is what we know as God. Because of this, many are quick to object that Aquinas begs the question and does not explain how this first mover is God. The point of the Summa Theologica, where this question comes from, proves what are the attributes of this first mover in the questions Aquinas answers right after these premises. So Aquinas explains how this first mover is God later in the same writing. Using Aquinas and the modern Thomistic philosopher Edward Fager, we'll discover the various attributes of this unmoved mover, or purely actual actualizer, and how from these attributes we can declare truthfully that this is what we know as God.
50, square left,
Now to start off,
long, don't
if
cut,
this unmoved mover is purely
60,
actual
crest,
and has no
100,
potential to change,
slowing,
we can say that this unmoved mover is immutable or unchangeable. And furthermore, from this we can conclude that this unmoved mover is eternal or timeless, as it can't go from point A in time to point B in time, as this involves change. Therefore, it would have to be outside of time itself. And furthermore, it can't begin to exist or even cease to exist, as this involves change. It also follows from this that the unmoved mover must be immaterial, as material things or objects have the potential to change color, shape, location, etc. Whereas because this unmoved mover is purely actual, it has no change, because change is when a potential becomes actual. Therefore, this unmoved mover is immaterial because it is purely actual. Now, is it possible for there to be multiple unmoved movers, as say, in the Greek pantheon of gods, or even metaphysical objects which are purely simple? Edward Fraser states, there could not even in principle, for there can be two or more of a kind only if there is something to differentiate them, something that one instance has that the others lack. Therefore, for each hierarchical causal series that exists, they all lead back to a purely actual actualizer, and none of these actualizers have any difference to differentiate them for each chain. Therefore, they would all have to be the same thing, and because they are all the same one thing, there is only one purely actual mover of all things. Now, based on this unmoved mover is the cause of everything in existence itself. Or to put it differently, this unmoved mover has the power to actualize everything in the universe. And because it has this power, it is omnipotent, or all-powerful, as it can actualize anything. Now, does this unmoved mover have intelligence or consciousness? Well, according to the principle of proportionate causality, whatever is in some effect must in some way or other be in the cause. To give an example, if I give you coffee, the effect in this analogy is you having the coffee, which in turn came from me, which is the cause. If God, or the unmoved mover, is the cause of all material things, then in some way, all material things are in God. But how is this possible if God is immaterial? The only possible way that these things exist in the unmoved mover is if they exist abstractly and are therefore immaterial in the unmoved mover. Edward Fraser states, so, what exists in the things that the purely actual cause is the cause of, pre-exists in that cause in something like the way the things we make pre-exist as ideas or plans in our minds before we make them. One could also argue that there are two things which are immaterial, which the unmoved mover, who is immaterial, could be. The first option is abstract things like numbers. The second is minds. But because abstract things like numbers do not have causal power or act, the unmoved mover would have to be a mind, which has causal power to act. We can also further establish that since all things exist abstractly in the mind of this unmoved mover, this mover would have to be omniscient and have all knowledge of these things. From all of this, we can conclude that the purely actual actualizer is one immutable, eternal, immaterial, omnipotent, and finally omniscient cause of all things. And for this to exist is for what we know of as God to exist. Therefore, God exists. Thank you for watching, and God bless.
What are counter-rotating propellers? These are two propellers on the same engine that spin in opposite directions. This cancels out the spinning force, making the plane more stable and easier to control. They also work together to push more air, giving the plane more power and efficiency.
Hello and welcome to Philosophy Vibe, the channel where we discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. Today we're going to be looking at some religious ethics and focusing on the theory of natural law. Right. Natural law was advocated by St. Thomas Aquinas. The central idea behind natural law is that human beings have an innate power to understand good and evil. God has written moral law into nature, and he has created all humans with the ability to know what morality is and to recognize what is good and what is evil. Okay, so why does Aquinas advocate the natural law theory? Good question. Well, Aquinas got most of the grounding for natural law through the works of Aristotle. Aristotle believed that everything in nature is constantly changing and moving, and this movement was all towards its specific purpose, or delis,
Slight left, 60, 4 right short, keep in
Aquinas
270.
agreed with this. He agreed that God created the world in this goal-driven manner, where everything was following strict natural laws to fulfill its specific purpose. Okay. Aquinas said this was the same for humans. Human beings are themselves moving to their delos. He refers to Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia. You could say it's like a heaven or a state of bliss, true and pure happiness. So Aquinas believed eudaimonia was only achieved in the afterlife, but it did not stop humans pursuing this and moving towards it. And we move towards eudaimonia by pursuing what is good and avoiding what is evil. If we as humans always strive to pursue good and avoid evil, we get closer and closer to our purpose and to reaching eudaimonia. Well, there's a bit of a problem here. Aquinas says we reach eudaimonia by pursuing good, but how exactly do we know what is good? Aquinas argued that this is through human reason. Human beings have the unique capability to reason, to be self-aware, to think and understand their surroundings and their lives. This reason unlocks for us our moral knowledge, and we will be able to recognise good, and we will know how we should live, and we will know
chicane.
Right, I see. Now, Aquinas went further. He argued that when we use our reason, we notice basic goods that all reasonable humans pursue. The main purposes of life, what near enough all humans want, and all humans are drawn towards. He distinguished 5 basic goods that we refer to as primary precepts. The primary precepts include life, the preservation and promotion of life, reproduction, the continuation of the human race, education. This is more so education of one's offspring, so they know how to continue the human race, and
Make 5 right, slowing, 50, 6 left short, 40, 2 right, 150.
We try to understand and make sense of our lives as a whole. And finally, law and order. This promotes justice and allows us to live in a functional, well-maintained society where humans can grow, develop and be safe. I see. So these are the primary precepts, the basic laws. Aquinas then goes on to say that natural law continues from the primary precepts into the secondary precepts. Once our reason and knowledge of the primary precepts, we use our reason to further derive our rules. Laws
To slight left, long,
according to the
170.
basic goods. So the specific laws or behavioural codes are the secondary precepts. I'm not sure I understand. Okay, let me explain. We'll take the first primary precept of life, the promotion of life. Our reason has acknowledged that this is a basic law to follow. We don't think about murder. As murder is taken away, it goes against the primary precept of promoting and preserving life, and so it goes against the natural law. So murder is something we shouldn't do. Murder is wrong. This would be a secondary precept. I see. Or if we take school, school is a place where children go to learn and educating the offspring is a primary precept. School is something that follows the primary precept and therefore follows the natural law. School is therefore good. This is another secondary precept. Yes, I understand. So this is the fundamental theory of natural law. Morality is an absolute God-given natural law that all humans have the innate ability to discover by using our reason. This does seem like
5 right to the crest, tightens, through junction 160.
Problems can be raised. Like what? Well, if morality is a natural law that God has written into
Slight right, tightens 3, half long, opens.
Reason and discover these laws, then why do people violate the natural law?
130. 5 left, slowing 40. 4 left, half long 30. 1 right, tightens, past junction.
Is there so much immorality? That is a good argument. Firstly, we need to understand that natural law for ethics is not like any other natural law. I can't violate the law of gravity, for example. However, for moral law, we need to remember that God is balancing this with free will, so it is necessary that I am physically able to violate moral natural law. Yes, okay, but why would anyone want to? This can be down to human emotion. We are at the end of the day emotional beings. We do not live by just reason alone, and so sometimes our emotions can get the better of us. It can cloud our reason and lead us to do wrong things and violate the natural law. When we break a basic good, our reason is being overpowered by emotion, and we do things we know deep down we shouldn't. But that's exactly it. Our reason has been pushed deep down. Okay, well here is another issue I have. You would agree that natural law is an absolutist theory. As morality has been written into nature, it must be absolute. Yes, correct. What is good and what is evil is absolute. It is not dependent on an outcome, but God has created this as law. An action is within itself, either right or wrong. So how would natural law deal with moral dilemmas, where violating a natural law would actually bring about more good? What do you mean? Consider someone who must commit a morally bad action in order to fulfill a morally good action. Let's imagine we're in a hospital and there has been a power cut. The backup generator does not have a lot of power. In the emergency room we have 3 people who need urgent care or they will die. In the room next door we have a man in a coma on a life support machine with no signs of recovery. As the backup generator is weak, the only way we can save the 3 people in the emergency room is to unplug the life support machine and use the power. So, what are the choices? If we do not unplug the life support machine, we let 3 people die. If we do unplug the life support machine, we are actively killing someone and so violating the natural law of life. I see. Well, Aquinas had a response to this. He refers to the doctrine of double effect. When we are faced with dilemmas like this, we need to look at the situation and ask, was the action one wanted to do good, and was evil intended in the action? So with regards to the hospital example, we want to save the 3 people. Is this good? Yes, I would say it is. This is still preserving and protecting life. So when we unplug the life support machine, did we intend evil? Not really. Our intention was to save the 3 people, which is good. We did not intend to kill the man in the coma. This is not what we set out to do. It was just an unfortunate situation, but the intention was good. So what we've done was morally good, it just had a bad side effect. So this means it is permissible under moral law. This seems problematic. How can this be an absolutist theory? How can the law be absolute if natural law can be violated being necessary? We're talking about situations in which the intended action is good, unintended side effects of violating natural law. However, as agents, we're not intending to drive
60 left of the crest,
rather
170.
This is just casual street. You can bend and shape and violate
Big jump, keep middle, 40, slight right, and 6 left, don't cut, slowing, 70, small crest, into 3 right, long.
I see. And finally, what we
30, small crest, 40, 6 left.
we can argue that Peugeot's created materials for humans and that our main
Titans 4, 50, slight left, and crest, 160. 4 right, tightens, 30, 3 left of the crest, opens, and turns, square right, 60.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed
5
the
left.
ride. And what are your thoughts on natural law? Do you think it's a good tool to explain human morality? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
5 left short of a jump, 50, 6 left. And 6 right, half long, and jump, 100. 6 right. 5 left short of a crest, 160. 4 right short, don't cut, 50, late, 4 left of the jump, open 6, 50, big jump, 90, slight right to the crest, 70, caution, 4 left of the jump, 100, turn, square right, don't cut, and 2 left, and crest, 120. Jump, 110. Slowing, 6 left, and 5 right, half long, don't cut, 2 left sharp. And left of a crest, 100. 3 right, 30, 5 left of the jump, keep in, and slight left, long. Into jump, 50, slight right, extra long. 130. Caution, 5 left short of a jump, 160. Slight left of the crest. And slight right, 140. Jump, keep middle, and slight left, 70. 6 left, tightens, 50. 6 right, tightens, into right of a jump, 90. 5 right, opens. And crest, slowing. Into 6 right, 40. Turn, 1 right. 70, caution, jump, sudden, 5 left. And 1 right short, don't cut, into 2 left short, and crest, 40, open hairpin left, don't cut. Opens 4. 30. Jump, and 1 right, half long, tightens, don't cut, and 2 left, tightens. And jump. And 5 left. To turn, 1 left, short, into 6 right, 6 left, don't cut, and turn, 2 right, don't cut, 130. Crest, and small jump, 140. Slight left, 170. 6 left, tightens, of a bump, 50, slowing, slight right to the crest, 40. Turn, square right, around bail, 70. Slight right to the crest, 70. Late 6 left, long. Tightens 5, 60. 4 right short, of a crest, 190. right, long. 90. Crest, 120. Small crest, slowing, 130. Crest, keep right, 50. Right entry chicane. 60. Crest, 70. Slight left, through dip, 200. Long crest, into slight right, slowing, 100. Small crest, 30, turn, 1 left, around Bale. 70, crest, 80. Slight right, long. Into crest, 70. 5 left, half long, 180. Crest, 370. Slight right of a crest, 80. 6 right, slowing, 110. Turn, square right, around Bales. 30, crest, 120. Turn square left, around Bale. 150, narrows. Small crest, and slide left, 40, 6 right of a crest, 60, crest, and left of a crest, 160. Late 6 left, don't cut, 70, slowing, 6 left of a crest, and 3 right, 70. Slight left of a crest, to slight right, 120. Caution, 6 left of a crest, tightens 5, 100. 3 right short, 100. 6 left, 90. Late, 6 left of a crest, don't cut, 50. Slight right of a crest, and crest, 50. Left of a crest, 130. 6 left, don't cut, and crest, 80. 6 left of crest, keep in, 120. 6 right, opens, slight right, long, 140. Crest, 30, crest, and 3 left short, don't cut, 80. Right entry chicane. Slight left of a crest, 90. 6 left of a crest, and bump into 6 right, opens, of a small jump, 100. Bumps. To slight left, very long. Tightens 5 of a crest, and slight right. To slight left, 40. Small crest, into 5 right, tightens, around Bale. Into 5 left, 70. Long crest, 30. Four left, long, slowing, 120. 1 left at house and slight right, 80. Opens into crest, 60. 3 left short, 170. short, around bale, 100. Slowing, crest, 40, square right short, around bale, and 6 left, half long, 50.
It's likely that millions, perhaps even billions of people have at one point or another felt the desire to not exist. Now when I say not exist, I'm not talking about the way some people wish they had never been born, or even somebody's self-destructive fantasies. No, the desire to not exist is a yearning to magically disappear, preferably in a way that doesn't require any sadness, violence, or death. You may know it as the wish to fall asleep and never wake up again. As often as this desire is felt, it's mysteriously rarely discussed. What I found surrounding why we sometimes feel this way says a lot about the nature of our existence, desires, and how we interpret the existence of others. In one of the most memorable scenes from Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov, a monk and an atheist walk into a bar.
Right to the crest.
Karamazov,
6
to be
left.
exact. What ensues is a debate about
Over
the
finish,
existence of God,
100 to stop.
albeit an unconventional one. In our world,
Okay.
nobody escapes the torture
That's an
of
11
daily
minute,
pains and
3.3.
disappointment. Even children suffer in horrific extremes. Thus, God, the elder of the two brothers maintains, must be evil to have introduced us to such a world. Any promises of paradise after this life are just taunts. Life is but a cruel angel's thesis. It's not that I don't accept God, I just most respectfully return him the ticket, he says. Ivan Karamazov rejects all notions of God's goodness. But even further than that, we can interpret that for Ivan it is not so important to contemplate whether or not God exists. The question that must be asked is whether or not we want to exist in a world like this one. This idea would be repeated by Albert Camus, who famously made the remark that in deciding whether or not one should kill oneself, one answers the fundamental question of philosophy. When we think of the desire to not exist, we usually imagine something akin to this kind of thinking. The idea that life is meaningless and insufferable is a popular one. However, when compared to these outlooks, the desire to not exist is unique. What these individuals desire is not death, but to experience non-experience. The desire is not a logical set of beliefs about the characteristics of life, but a complex psychological wish. Furthermore, not everyone who longs for nothingness thinks existence is entirely unbearable. To not want to die, but also wanting to simply not exist, implies a contradictory hope that one might continue to go on living. I think the most tempting way to explain this is to bring up what is called cognitive dissonance. When a person has two contradictory beliefs, but can only embody one of them, they will pick the one that is easier to exhibit. In this case, it's easy to suggest that the people who would like to not exist continue to live their lives because death is much too messy and final. It takes a certain dedication to accept death. Of course, there is something to be said for this idea. After all, most people would hesitate to see death as a solution to their problems, but this outlook of cognitive dissonance ignores the intense feeling these individuals still experience, not to mention the ways they'll still attempt to replicate nothingness in their own lives. One way of reading this contradiction is that it is prohibition that leads to fantasy. We desire that which we cannot have. Not only is nothingness impossible, we're told that we must not achieve it. We might therefore desire nothingness simply as a way to exert our freedom. The impossible is desired all the more for its impossibility. One of the best references to the desire to not exist can be found in the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard's book, The Sickness Unto Death.
3, 2,
Kierkegaard's argument
1,
is that the torment
go.
of desire to
60,
exist is the
5
hopelessness
right,
of not
half
being
long,
able to
Titans 3, 60,
Death means an end to life.
3 left short, around
Not
side,
a sickness that will
caution and bridge, to 5 left, to 6 right of crest,
when death is encountered, one will wish they could die. Even if
Titans
this last
5,
respect is taken from them, the desire
and
to
5
suffer
left,
will
very
result
long,
in an act that Kierkegaard calls despair.
40,
But as we've already discussed,
caution, 5 left short, and late 6 right, Titans of a crest, 70,
Kierkegaard, a deeply religious thinker, thought of despair as a response to the eternity that lies after death. By replacing his mentions of death with the idea of nothingness, we lose something from his writings. But even if we disassemble this part of his argument, the most fascinating portion still remains. There exist, even in life, simulated perceptions of eternity. When time is slowed to a crawl and every monotonous day bleeds out in unity, we are held a hostage of eternity. Boredom, depression, and nostalgia all linger here. But some of the less familiar residents of non-time also deserve a mention. The delirious ache of desire is felt here, and it is also in the silence of eternity that we catch our glimpse of nothingness. Eternity is important to Kierkegaard's argument because it preserves everything he says a despairing person wishes they could be freed from. It's in eternity that the self remains immutable, and that's exactly what can be so dreadful about it. A self is a heavy burden. During the total ceasefire of time, the inability to escape from ourselves grows ever more prominent. Under the right conditions, that can be its own form of suffering. At a first glance, the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion appears to be about angsty teens piloting giant robots as they fight otherworldly entities referred to as angels. But in reality, the show is about one 14-year-old boy's fight with his desire to not exist. Of course, spoilers ahead. Each of the main characters suffers from an intense existential loneliness. However, it's in Shinji, a character modeled after the anime's creator, that we find the show's depiction of this desire. Episode 16 is even titled The Sickness Unto Death, in reference to Kierkegaard. Eva isn't shy about naming its philosophical influences. By explicitly using philosophy, Neon Genesis Evangelion presents us with an interesting existential argument. In order to understand that argument, we need to take a look at the ideas of the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, another one of the anime's major influences. In his book, The World as Will and Representation, Schopenhauer describes the way individuality can cause suffering. He argues that the world is made up of will and representation. While the total universe is in fact one thing, operating in unity, human beings each have their own will, distinct from that of the universe and each other. Furthermore, each person only experiences a limited sample of the total universe, causing them to have their own unique perspectives, longings, and pains. To Schopenhauer, as long as human beings exist separately from one another, there will be suffering. This dilemma is portrayed countless times in Evangelion, as the main cast of characters repeatedly struggle to deal with the pain inherent to the process of becoming close to another person. Eva doesn't just stop here.
60, 5 right,
The shadowy organization Seele, German for soul, seeks the literal unification of all human life through what is called the Human Instrumentality Project. The project is intended to destroy the boundaries
5,
of our egos
4,
and allow for
3,
total harmony
2,
as each person's consciousness is merged
Go.
into one
60,
total unit.
5 right, half long, tightens 3, 60,
Kill me!
3 left short, around sign.
What the hell is this?
This apocalyptic event will unite all minds, hearts, and bodies as one. In the movie End of Evangelion, after the human instrumentality project is unwittingly put into motion by Shinji, we're presented with a surreal commentary on the psychology of those who desire nothingness.
Asuka, help me! Please! Asuka, you're the only one for me!
You're lying. You know you are. You'd run up to anyone. You're afraid of Misato and Rei. You're afraid of your father and your mother. It's just that now you're only running to me. It's the easiest and least painful thing to do.
Come on, Asuka, help me!
The truth is, you've never really loved anybody.
The psychoanalyst and philosopher Jacques Lacan suggested that our desires form in response to our separation from one another. Lacan often discussed the existence of something called the other. We can understand his mentions of the other in 2 ways. First, as someone who is not you. Second, as the big other, a more enigmatic character. The big other's essential feature is that we struggle to know what it desires despite our persistent efforts to find out. The big other is not a person, per se. It is a symbol, a category. All desire forms in response to some lack in our lives. All desire fundamentally
Caution and bridge into 5 left. Into 6 right to the crest.
Recognition. Lacan's argument is that your desire comes from
Tightens
the best
5,
guess as to what the
and
big
5
other
left,
lacks or
very
desires.
long.
The big other is
40.
always present in the mind. Its imagined presence leading you to wonder if your desire is acceptable and
Caution 5 left short, and late 6
as
right,
you define
tightens
yourself
of a crest,
are a desirable
70.
person. Schopenhauer saw the individual will of the self as a pointless striving with no end. To him, only suffering arises from our wants, because our wants can only stem from an initial dissatisfaction. This
3
also
left,
applies to
don't
what
cut,
Kant is saying
30,
about desire.
5 right, into 3 left, don't cut, and nearly 2 right,
It's always a fact that we never truly comprehend what
and
the
3
other
left
desires
short,
from us.
80,
The burden of desire easily finds
Over
itself
bridge.
implicated alongside pain. Evangelion makes a very important point that obsessing over the desire of the other can introduce feelings of shame, ending in the desire to not exist. Shame is a deep disappointment with oneself for not being desired, a feeling that the whole self is invalid. Yet it can only be felt before something of an audience, even if it's an imagined one. In shame, we view ourselves from an exterior perspective, that of the big other. The desire of the big other isn't as simple a matter as merely doing what other people want from us, it's about wanting the thing other people want. Shinji is afraid that he has no desirable qualities other than being the pilot of his Eva, and to be
into
fair,
3 left
he's
short,
not so
5
far
right
off.
short,
He's left
30,
behind
5 right,
knowledge
160,
that
slowing.
stem from their own unresolved issues. Asada wants Shinji to be what she could. Asa wants him to be less apologetic and pursuing. And by the end of it all, it's still not really clear what his father desires of him. Notorious is the dynamic that plays out as a result. Shinji thrashes about in indecision, hesitant to pilot his Eva knowing the pain it will cause him, but nonetheless wanting to please others. He's told to only do it if he wants to, which is really just a more severe way of being told to do it and enjoy it. The presentation of a choice here is really an illusion. All of this culminates into the conflict of Shinji's own desires as they bite and cower at the desire of the big other. In certain scenes and through certain responses, we see that Shinji is ashamed that his desires are not those of the others. One can think life is full of good and still not want to fully take part in it. Rebelling against all existence, he thinks he has acquired evidence against